Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Angel, and in the month of April, I read 24 books. And this has been my best reading month of 2023, not only in the number of books that I read, but 16 out of those 23 I rated 4 stars or above, which is pretty dang good for me. So I'm going to go ahead and go through all those books. I have them separated by genre so that I can make it a little bit easier. You guys will have to bear with me though, because I don't have physical copies of all the books. Most of what I read comes from the library, so I can save money, and then a lot of it also is ebooks, so I don't have physical copies for everything, but that's okay. We'll still get through it. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to start with horror because that is the majority of what I read. So for horror in April, I read Horrorstor by Grady Hendrix. This book is about a group of employees at an IKEA-esque furniture store. And basically they find that when they come in the morning, somebody has been in there overnight and is like messing things up. They find human poop on one of the couches. So the manager gets a group of employees together to stay the night so that they can deal with this problem, get this person out of there. This book takes you all over the place. You don't know what's real or what's not real, and it's just twisty and turny, but I loved it. I love the atmosphere, being in one of these big creepy furniture stores overnight. It just was really good and really fun, honestly. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read The Ones That Got Away by Stephen Graham Jones, which is a short story collection. And Stephen Graham Jones has not been my favorite in the past. I feel like his writing is very, very hard to get into. He's definitely got a very unique style, and it doesn't always work for me. But overall, I gave this collection 3.5 stars. So my favorites were Father, Son, and Holy Rabbit, which was actually the first story in the collection. But it's a little bit of a survival story about a man and his son stuck in the woods, in the snow, so they have to survive, and they find a rabbit, and they eat it, and then things are not what they seem, and it gets dark and twisted, and I really, really enjoyed it. Then my second favorite story was So Perfect, which follows 2 teenage girls and the very bizarre ways they go about trying to lose weight. So it is very eating disorder heavy, but it's also dark and messed up, just like you would expect. And then the last story that I would call a favorite in this collection was Monsters, which follows a boy and a girl as they meet over the summer and the dog that they are pet sitting. But I can't say more than that. Like, just go into it blindly, honestly. Just go into it blindly. So those were the 3 that I really loved. I gave all of those 4 stars. Nothing in this collection got a 5-star from me, but I did really enjoy those stories. Then I read Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. This book has been on my TBR for years, and I didn't know that it originated on the No Sleep subreddit, which makes so much sense because I loved it so much, and I used to go on that subreddit all the time and read all those stories and just was absolutely obsessed. So once I found that out, I was like, so that's why I like this book so much. So this story follows a couple, Felix and Faye, as they go to like a secluded cabin in the woods for a little romantic weekend getaway. And now Faye has a sleep disorder, which makes her talk in her sleep. She sleepwalks. So that's a little creepy right there to start off with. But once they get to the cabin, it starts to get even creepier, and Felix realizes that not only is she talking in her sleep, but she is actually having a conversation with somebody that he is not able to see. I apologize if there is background noise. There's a mouse in here that was just running on her wheel, so she gets a little crazy sometimes. Anyway, I absolutely loved like the first part of this book. It was just exactly my brand of horror. Spooky woods, spooky creature in the woods, spooky creature in the woods talking to you. I was obsessed, and it actually freaked me out, which doesn't happen very often. It was kind of anxiety inducing for me, and it doesn't help that I was kind of reading it at work, which my office at work is kind of in a more empty part of the building. I'm really the only one down there, and then in the middle of me reading this, I'm already freaking out. A fire drill happens, so the alarm comes on like loud as hell, and I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was about to die. That's how creeped out this book had me. So I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star rating. The only reason it wasn't a 5 is because I wasn't really a big fan of the end or the conclusion. It just felt like everything worked out too easy. Like, this creature has been haunting and taunting them for months, and then it just got solved too easily, I feel like. So that's the only reason I knocked off that half star, but I really loved reading it, and I'm definitely going to buy a physical copy. Then I read The Laws of the Skies. This is a book that was translated from French, so it's got a French author whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce because I know I'm going to say it wrong. So let's just avoid that. So this is a short and quick read about a group of 6-year-olds that goes on a camping trip with 2 adult chaperones, and you're basically just reading a book about how every single one of them dies. And that's not a spoiler because they tell you on the first page that every single person is going to die. Like I said, it was quick, it was short, it was straight to the point, it was brutal, it was graphic, and everything that you could ask for if you are looking for a messed up book. Overall, I gave it a 3.75, and I thought the writing was pretty good. Then I read The Vessel by Adam Neville, which is another short, quick read. This book follows our main character Jess as she accepts a job as a caregiver for an elderly woman at this big, creepy, weird house. I thought this book was a good folk horror. It definitely had lots of creepy elements, lots of fun elements, and especially if you like folk horror, definitely would recommend. I gave it a 3.75 because I wasn't really a big fan of the writing style, and I feel like the concept was so interesting and the author had so many creepy elements in it, it just wasn't fully developed. Like, I think there was more that could have been done with the original concept. It kind of felt a little bit too quick and too short for me, but that's just my opinion. Then I read The Wendigo by Algernon Blackwood. This is another short, creepy horror book. I'm sure you guys can see a little bit of a pattern here. I like my novellas. This book follows a group of hunters in the Canadian woods. They are looking for moose, but they find another thing lurking out there. And I'm sure by the title, you can probably imagine what it is they found. So this book was actually written in 1910, which I didn't realize until I was reading it. So be aware of that when you go in. There are definitely some things in the writing that made me cringe a little bit. Just the use of the N-word, referring to Native Americans as Indians. It made me cringe a little bit, but I got through it, and I'm trying not to be too critical of that because it is such an old book. Overall, I gave it 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend it if you are the type of person who likes to read short horror. Good, classic, spooky story. Next, I read A Gift of Death by Daniel J. Volpe. This one also has been on my TBR for a long time, and it is another novella. Like I said, are we surprised? This book follows a metal band where 2/3 of the members are female vampires. I thought the writing was very, very good, so descriptive, lots of gore. The story concept was so interesting. Like, if this ever was made into a full-length novel, I would definitely read it because I enjoyed it so much. However, I did have one issue with the writing, and that is, like, the excessive mention of breasts. Like, the first chapter has 5 descriptions of boobs. I don't know what it is with this author, but anytime there was a female character introduced, he had to make sure you knew what their tits looked like. So, you know, one of the band members didn't ever wear a bra, but if you forget, that's fine because he'll tell you, again, the next time she's in a scene. So, yeah, I wasn't really a fan of that. It just seemed a little unnecessary. Didn't add anything to the story. I don't need to know that somebody's nipples are hard. Like, what does that contribute? But because I had so much fun reading it aside from that, I did give it 4 stars, and I do plan to read more from this author. I know he's got a few that are out there that have been talked about because they are gross and disturbing. Okay, the first one I actually have a physical copy of. This is Empire of Wild by Sherry Dimeline. So she is the author of one of my all-time favorite books, which is The Marrow Thieves. I am obsessed. So I found this at the thrift store. First of all, that cover is gorgeous. Second of all, I didn't realize that it was an ARC until I got home and I started reading it. So this book is a folk horror story following an indigenous... Oh my god. The cat needs to be involved in everything. So this is a folk horror story about an indigenous legend of a wolf-like creature called a Rogaroo. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. It's Rogarou. So it's kind of like werewolf-like. In this story, we're following a woman whose husband has gone missing 11 months ago. One day she's in a Walmart parking lot, sees a weird tent. She wanders into it, and there's her husband. Except now he's a reverend, he's got a different name, a different personality, and when she tries to explain to him or talk to him and say, "You're my husband," he's like, "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. So they brush her off as just a crazy drunk person. They actually call an ambulance to get her sent away. So we are following her on this journey as she follows this group of people in order to figure out why her husband's with them, what happened to him, why he can't remember anything. But I thought this was really, really good. And it's kind of funny. In a way, it reminds me of Get Out. So if you guys know the movie Get Out, you know that the character goes into what is called the sunken place in the movie. And this book is kind of similar to that, but instead of the sunken place, they have little short chapters of the husband that are called Victor in the Woods. And it was very reminiscent of that concept for me, but I don't want to spoil too much. I thought this book was so good, so fun. Love a good folk horror. I give it 4 stars. Then I read 3 Eric LaRocca books, and I think I officially have decided that they are one of my favorite authors. I have not given any of their books less than a 4 stars. Just chef's kiss. So the first one I read was The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, which is the short story collection that just recently got republished. I think it was under a different name before. But I picked that up and read it, and it was a lot darker and twisted than I thought it would be, but I shouldn't be surprised because it's Eric LaRocca. He writes some pretty messed up stuff, right? I will tell you though, the story in that book called Bodies Are for Burning has literally not left my mind. I still think about it, probably like every day. Like, what? My other favorite stories in that collection were You're Not Supposed to Be Here, and then one that's called Where Flames Burned Emerald as Grass. I always forget the name of that, but that story I thought was really, really interesting. Overall, I gave the collection 5 stars because I thoroughly enjoyed every single story that was in here. Then I read They Were Here Before Us, which is a novella in pieces, as it says on the book, and it's kind of got 3 different little stories in it, but they all have an overall connecting theme of the only thing more brutal than nature is love. And I could definitely see how that plays out through all the stories. The first one, which was definitely my favorite, was the title story, They Were Here Before Us, but it's 4 different chapters, each told in the POV of an animal. So for example, the first story is the point of view of a beetle that is on top of a dead, decomposing body, and the way that he thinks he is falling in love with who this person is. All 4 of those animal point of view stories I absolutely loved. Then the next story is called Bird and Bug Are Happy, which is about 2 women that are in a relationship. Things are kind of fuzzy. You know that there's something weird that has happened or is going on, but you're not entirely sure what's going on until the end, and then it gets dark and twisted and just strange. Then the last story in that one is called All That Remains Is Yours to Keep, which is about a father and a son driving late at night. They run over something and they find out that it is a human body that has been completely ripped apart, torn to shreds, and now they have to figure out what did it and is it going to come and get them. Overall, I gave it a 5-star rating. Like I said, those animal point of view stories just really made it for me. I loved those. And the book is filled with just incredibly cool illustrations, so that was really awesome as well. Then I went to my library and borrowed Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke and Other Misfortunes. So I have read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke a couple years ago. Not a couple years ago, but 2021 when it came out. Absolutely loved it, gave it 5 stars, but I wanted to read the other 2 stories that were published in this one. So the first story that I read was The Enchantment, which is about a divorced couple and their son who dies in a very sad and tragic way. After his death, they decide maybe they should rekindle their love. Then things get very weird, as with every Eric LaRocca story. You don't know what's real, what's not real. It was just very strange. Then the last story in that one is You'll Find It's Like That All Over, where a man finds a bone fragment in his yard, which ends up leading him to his neighbor's house, and his neighbor kind of draws him in with this betting game because he really needs money, so he decides to go along with it. That one wasn't my favorite story, but I still gave it 4 stars as well as The Enchantment, so Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke is a 5-star from me, has been a 5-star, and then the other 2 were 4 stars. That is it for horror. Now we get to move on to my thriller mystery category. Another physical copy. I have The Breakdown by B.A. Paris. I want to read Behind Closed Doors by this author so bad, but I got this one, I don't know, somebody was giving away books and I took it because I had heard the author's name before, and then it sat on my physical TBR forever until I finally decided to read it. I read this one after not reading a thriller for a little while, and I was obsessed. It reminded me why I love thrillers so much. I had so much fun with this book. So this book follows the main character, Cass, who one night is driving home down a windy wood road in a storm. She sees a car pulled over with a woman inside of it, and she decides ultimately not to stop because she doesn't want to get trapped or kind of roped into something. You know how people will stop their car and then get you to come out and then they'll kidnap you. That was basically her thought process. So she decided to just keep driving and go home. You know, this person will be fine, whatever. So she gets home that night, and then the next day on the news she sees that the woman in this car had been murdered at some time after she drove past. So she becomes increasingly more paranoid, forgetful of things, and just doesn't know what the heck is going on. What happened to this woman? Why so close to her home? And she's just freaking out. Like I said, I had so much fun reading this. It was very easy to follow, very fast paced. I gave it 4 stars. Then The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This one I got really lucky. I found it at the thrift store about a week before the live show for Books and Lala's book club, because that was their April pick. So I was kind of stoked that I got to read it in time to watch the live show and be a part of that and see everybody else's thoughts on the book. Also kind of funny because you can see it's a book of the month book. I know this one just came out in February, I think, so it is pretty new. But I absolutely love this cover. Like, the neon green is such a vibe. This book is about a group of authors that get the kind of once-in-a-lifetime chance to go to another famous author's home for a writing retreat. But once they get there, they find out it's not going to be as fun and laid back as they thought it would, and it's actually revealed to them that they must write an entire novel, totally brand new novel, in the 1 month that they are there. I thought this was a good, solid thriller. It was very enjoyable to read. There are lots of different little twists, little conflicts that arise. It was pretty good overall. I gave it 3.5 stars. Like I said, it was enjoyable to read, but it was nothing mind-blowing or supremely shocking. Then I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Now, let me tell you, a while ago, I kind of decided Riley Sager wasn't for me. I thought that a lot of his writing was kind of average for how much he is hyped up. Like, people are obsessed with Riley Sager, and I think his writing is good, but I don't think it's that good. But I decided I would give him another try because I had heard good things about this. I also really like the cover design, so that's kind of what sold me on it, but I decided I would give him another try, and I'm still not sure if that was the right choice. I still am not entirely sure how I feel about this book. This book follows our main character, Casey, as she goes to stay at her lake house after the recent death of her husband, when a new couple moves into the house across the lake. So one day, by a chance meeting, Casey actually saves the wife of this new couple from drowning in the lake. After that, they become friends, and Casey becomes obsessed with watching their house from across the lake, uncovering the dark secrets of their marriage. And I think I should note here that Casey is an alcoholic as well, so she is an unreliable narrator. I'm definitely not a very big fan of books like that, because I feel like the entire time I can't enjoy what I'm reading because I'm just questioning, well, is any of this actually happening? Is any of this actually real? So I absolutely loved, like, the first half of this book, the setup, all of the new little things that were being discovered and how everything was kind of put into place. There were small little twists, little reveals that I think went along with the story perfectly. I thought it was great, the first half. And then about 200 pages in, it kind of lost me. And then the big twist came and I was ready to stop reading. It's just, I don't know. I did not like the twist in this book at all. I wanted the book to be done with after it was revealed. So because I enjoyed reading the first half of it so much, I still gave it 3.5 stars. The ending did wrap up very nicely, but the twist, the conclusion, it just was not for me. But if you are someone that likes ridiculous, over the top, just kind of stupid twists, this book is probably for you. But it kind of felt like I was reading it and I was like, this feels like satire, but I don't think it's supposed to be satire. So I don't know if that's a good thing. Then I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I have seen so many people talking about this book, so many good things about this book. The Goodreads rating is like unusually high for a thriller. It was kind of strange, so I decided to give it a try. So this story follows a woman named Millie as she goes to be a live-in housekeeper for this rich couple in their nice little house. And we know that Millie's got some things in her past because we learned that she's just recently got out of prison, but we don't know what it's for, what's going on, just that she's taken this new job. So in this couple, the husband is, of course, handsome and charming, and the wife just is very mean. She's kind of cruel and naggy and just seems like she's picking on Millie constantly. So that's the premise of this book. Now, this book is advertised specifically as an absolutely addictive psychological thriller with a jaw-dropping twist, and I don't agree with that at all. I'm really sorry. I saw the twist coming. It has been done before. It was nothing new, nothing shocking. Now, I know what you're thinking. There are so many thriller books in the world, right? Like, how often is there really an original twist? And I get that, I do, but the book, the writing didn't do anything special for me, the story didn't do anything special for me, it was kind of average. Pair that with a twist that's been done before, I don't know. I guess I'm a part of the unpopular opinion group on this book, and I gave it 3 stars. On the bright side, though, I will say this book was very fast-paced and easy to get through. The story was easy to follow. It was a very, very quick read. I would definitely recommend this to anybody who doesn't read a lot of thrillers or is new to the thriller genre, just because I think in that case you will definitely be shocked by the twist. But I've read so many thrillers, like I said, I've seen the twist done in other books that it didn't really work for me, but I would still recommend it to somebody who wants a good, quick thriller to read. Then I read Whisper Down the Lane by Clay McLeod Chapman. He wrote Ghost Eaters, which was one of my top books of 2022. Absolutely obsessed. Loved it. This book, I went into it thinking it was horror, but after reading it, I think it definitely fits more in the thriller or mystery category. There wasn't a lot of horror, but there was definitely a lot of mystery. So this book follows our main character, Richard, in the present, but it also flashes back to him as a child named Sean. So right there, we get a little bit of a mystery. Why did he change his name? What happened in his past when he was a kid? And then on top of that, we have another mystery because now somebody is kind of messing with him and leaving messed up things for him to find using the name Sean, so he knows that it's targeted at him. So now you really want to know what happened in his past and why this person is targeting him and who this person is and what the goal is and all of that. So this story is inspired by the 80s satanic panic and also the McMartin preschool trial, which I had never heard of before reading this, but now I'm definitely going to read up more about it because I think that is so interesting. And the fact that it's based off of a true story is very, very interesting to me as well. I ended up giving this book a 4.25 stars. I really, really liked it. And I don't know what it is about this author's writing, but I had the same thing when I read Ghost Eaters by him, where I just was obsessed. I ate it up, and any spare second I had during the day, I was reading this book. Because I just needed to be reading it. I don't know. I don't know what it is about this author and his writing, but the 2 books I've read from him, I have just been absolutely addicted to. Up next, I'll just talk about the other fiction books that I read. So I've read God, Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert. This is the 4th book in the main Dune series. I'm obsessed. So this book takes place 3,000 years after the original Dune book, where Paul's son Leto has fused himself with one of the sandworms, basically making him immortal in a way, so that's why he's been able to rule over the planet for 3,000 years. I thought this book was so interesting. We get introduced to a lot of new characters, obviously. The planet of Arrakis is totally different. It's green, it's got water on it, it's no longer just a desert land. We've got this group of rebels that is trying to take over the Emperor because obviously, can you imagine being underneath the same ruler for that long? The day you are born till the day you die, you are underneath the same ruler? That sounds horrible. So I totally understand why they wanted to overthrow his kingdom. So not only do we get the good old sci-fi aspects of the Dune universe and some familiar faces, but like I said, lots of new characters, lots of new different concepts in sci-fi. In addition, this book was very, very philosophical. We are following one of the characters who steals the journals from the God Emperor, so all of the stuff that he has recorded over the 3,000 years that he's ruled. So he's obviously very wise, got a lot of stuff going on in that brain, and it was so fascinating to read. This book also made me laugh out loud a couple times. It was definitely solid 5 stars even before I think I was like 100 pages in and I was like, this is a 5-star book. That's it. A lot of people say that this is their favorite in the series, and I could definitely understand why, because I think this might be my favorite in the series so far as well. Then I read Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasulke. This is a book about a man who accidentally somehow uploads his consciousness into an app. So he's trying to get out of there by messaging his coworkers, just, hey, I'm stuck, get me out. And they all think he's joking. Like 90% of the book, the coworkers are like, yeah, whatever. He's just playing a prank, whatever. It isn't until the end that they're actually like, wait, you're being for real? So it was ridiculous. It was very, very quick, easy read. Definitely like a one sitting type of book because it's all told through chat messages. So it's just very easy to read. It was also fun. It was ridiculous. It was very funny. And overall, I really, really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Tales from the Cafe, which is book 2 in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. This mouse is being ridiculous. I don't know if you guys can hear her, but she's going ham right now. So I gave this book 3 stars. I thought the first book was very, very interesting. I love the concept idea of it. I think it's very fascinating. However, to take that same exact plot and then make multiple books from it just with different characters, I feel like it just wasn't different enough for me to really actually enjoy it that much. So I'm not going to read the other books in the series. I'm just going to call it quits after this. It was still pleasant to read, but it just didn't do enough for me in order to be different from the first book. So basically, I just didn't feel like reading the same story a second time. Okay, now last I have all of my nonfiction that I read in April. I am in the process of reading all of the nonfiction on my TBR just because I want to read more nonfiction, so let's go ahead and go through that. First, I read How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell, and this book needs to change its title. It needs to change its synopsis because there's absolutely nothing how-to about this, and the synopsis I feel like didn't really go with what actually happened in the book. I thought this was going to be really good, talking about, as you know, the author puts it, the attention economy, how much time we spend on our phones or on social media, things like that, and how to step away from that. And that is something that I'm very, very interested in reading about, and this book just was not it. This book was filled with tons of stories and personal anecdotes from the author, which there's nothing wrong with that, but when that's the entire content of your book and it doesn't totally relate to what the book is supposed to be about, I feel like it just lost me a little bit. Not only is it filled with her personal anecdotes, but then there's also extensive quotes from other sources, like paragraph of quotes, and then an anecdote, and then another quote that just, I feel like, was all over the place. It didn't relate to what the book was supposed to be about, and I just didn't enjoy reading it at all. It also felt like very overwritten and like overly complicated in the writing style and the words that she used for absolutely no reason. It was a chore to get through this book, and I gave it 2 stars. Then I read Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but I loved this book. Maybe I'm biased because I haven't eaten meat since I was like 16 years old, but this book was so well done. So this book explores specifically the food industry in the US, animal agriculture, factory farming, overfishing, bycatch, the way that has such a horrible effect on the oceans, and it's done so well. I really, really loved it. I think this is such an important book to read, not to be like that vegan that tells everybody that they should stop eating animals, but this is definitely a good book if you want to read more about that, just to see where our food actually comes from. Our food, I should say. There are also so many shocking statistics in here, and this book was published in 2009. The author stated that it took him 3 years to write it, so most of the statistics in here are from 2005. So when you think about that, that's almost 20 years ago. I am kind of scared to know how different things might be today, because this was just extremely shocking on its own. Now to think how much worse it probably is a really scary thought. In case it wasn't clear, I gave this 5 stars. Obsessed. The next nonfiction I read was Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. This is a memoir which talks about her experience growing up as a Black girl with an incarcerated father and an abusive mother, who also will sometimes bring home abusive boyfriends. She also spoke about her experience being raped at a young age and just the way that all of this affected her and how she grew into adulthood. I thought this was really, really good. Obviously very, very sad and hard to read, all of the things that happened to her as a child, but a very important story for plenty of people out there. So definitely recommend. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben. I don't know if I said that correctly, but this is the first book in a little trilogy that he did, which is called Discoveries from a Secret World. I was so excited by the concept. I think it's so fascinating how trees are like interconnected social beings. Like they can communicate with each other. So I was so excited to read more about that and to learn more and expand my knowledge on the topic, and this book just kind of fell flat for me. It was all over the place. There wasn't really a clear format to the information that was presented. The chapters were very, very short, where you would get into one idea, be interested, it would just never get fully fleshed out, and then he'd be on to the next chapter, and then I just find myself at the end of every chapter reading this being like, okay, so what was the point? Like, what was this chapter trying to tell me? Because I don't know. There was no conclusion to any of the chapters. I will say that it is very well researched. You can tell that the author is very passionate about this topic. That comes through very, very clearly in the writing. I gave it 3 stars, and I would recommend it to somebody who has some prior knowledge about the topic or a deeper interest in the topic. I just feel like the interesting information that I was able to retain from it was not enough to make up for the reading experience, which was not that positive. Alright, and the last one I have is How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LePera. Don't know if I said that correctly. She is on Instagram as @theholistic psychologist, so some of you probably heard of her. She's got a pretty decent following. My sister and I like to read books like this together, spiritual, self-help-ish books, so that's why there's so many tabs, is because we'll read a couple chapters every week and then get together and talk about it. So I tab all the things that I want to bring up when we talk. So this book is really just about learning who you are, why you are the way that you are, especially if you have past traumas, how to heal from that, how to grow as a person, and I thought it was really good. The author includes a lot of real life exercises that you can do, journal prompts and things like that to help you do the work outside of just reading the book. So if you are into topics like this, I would definitely recommend. I also would kind of recommend it broadly. I know not everybody's into books like this, but I think it is very important to learn why you are the way that you are and why you react the way that you react, and how a lot of it has to do with your past trauma or your childhood and things like that. I thought it was really good. I gave it 5 stars. And that is all 24 books that I read in April. So if you guys have read any of these, let me know your thoughts down below because I'm really curious to see. But other than that, thanks for watching.